Bago tayo umusad sa iba pa nating malalaking balita sa umagang ito, at tayo maki-update muna hinggil ho dun sa mga proyekto may kinalaman sa pagpapalakas ng enerhiya dito sa ating bansa, lalo't kasama ho ito sa mga priority ng Pangulong Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. With us on the line, si Congressman Marco Juanco, 5th District ng Pangasinan, at nandyan din ang atin hong mga bumibisita sa ating bansa na ilang mga eksperto pagdating ho sa enerhiya, si Miss Angelica Ong ng Taiwan, at of course ang researcher from Chicago, Illinois, si Mark Nelson, isa hong energy expert. At welcome sa Bombo Radio Philippines, we're nationwide and worldwide. Unahin kong tanungin si Congressman Juanco. Congressman, may mga bisita pala na nandito ho sa Pilipinas para sa posibleng pagbuhay dito sa nuclear power dito sa ating bansa. So ano ho yung magiging papel ng naturang nila doon sa naturang programa? By the way, my name is Bombo Dennis Hamito, and with me si Bombo Alaysa Eclarinal, Congressman.
Yeah, sila Angelica at saka si Mark Nelson inimbita ng Alpas Pinas to come to join our once a year Stand Up for Nuclear event. Ito po ay isang international event na nangyayari sa mga malalaking syudad sa buong mundo, sa maraming bansa. I think around 30 cities already are joining this yearly event. No? So this has been the fourth year or fifth year na Alpas Pinas hosted this event, and they were invited as resource speakers, as guests of honor to share their experience. Angelica is a writer, an energy writer in Taiwan. She writes about wind energy and also nuclear energy. And she has a good insight into the energy situation in Taiwan. And Mark Nelson is a Master's of Nuclear Engineering from Cambridge University in UK. He was a scholar there, and he is a pro-nuclear advocate who has been instrumental in the Stand Up for Nuclear organization worldwide. So Mark comes from Chicago, Illinois, which is I think 80% nuclear power ang state na yon sa United States. So maraming insight si Mark Nelson sa nuclear power around the world.
Okay. For my first question to Miss Angelica Ong. My next question, Miss Angelica, good morning. Based on your observation, is it applicable for the Philippines to have a nuclear plant, knowing that we are very prone to natural calamities, Miss Angelica?
So glad to be on your show, and I would like to share the experience from Taiwan. You say that the Philippines is prone to earthquakes and typhoons. All that applies to Taiwan as well. And we've been safely using nuclear energy ever since the late 70s. In the 80s, our 6 nuclear reactors gave us 50% of our energy. And that has been the steady foundation on which Taiwan's economic growth has gone up and up and up ever since. I think the topic of Fukushima is unfortunate because we've got earthquakes and hurricanes everywhere in Taiwan as well, and also in Japan during the tsunami, where so many people died, something like 20,000 people died. None was from radiation, and all of the surrounding nuclear plants, they all survived very well. It was one plant where they unfortunately put the backup generator in the basement. We don't do that in Taiwan. And that's not the way things would be done in Bataan. I actually had the the good fortune to visit BNPP, what I saw was a nuclear power plant that was very well constructed. And of course, you will need a lot of work on it before it starts to produce power. But let's say the Koreans take it over and they decide to fix it up for you guys, then they would do it to very high standards, post Fukushima standards, and that would ensure that it would not start producing electricity certainly until it's passed all the international inspections. So I think the Philippines can be assured that there are international standards for these sort of things, and that we can go on and safely produce power from Bataan.
I see. Okay. With me is Bombo Alliance sa Clarinal. Bombo Alliance with your questions.
Okay, good morning, sir. I would like to throw my first question for Mr. Mark. Good morning, Sir Mark. How long would it be to build and start a nuclear power source, and how much would it take for the government to have one of these power plant?
Well, Philippines is one of the only countries in the world without an operating plant where we know a bunch of these answers because you already built a plant. You just didn't turn it on. So in the Philippines, you built a plant that's about double the power of most SMRs. It's small, but it's really powerful. You built that plant in about 7 years or so. The program was barely longer than that, so maybe 8 years, construction time 7. Your time to commercial operation would have been another year, so that would have been about 8 years. But the thing about nuclear is if you start building a project, you suddenly start adding reactors faster and faster and faster with only a few years in between. Let me give you an example. The United Arab Emirates, a country with tons of fossil fuels, decided to go nuclear. So that itself is very interesting to hear. They had fossil fuels. They could have just kept burning them. They decided to build nuclear instead. Once they got the idea of making a program, they spent a few years making it right. Number one, they set up an independent regulator. Then, number two, they held a competition for countries around the world to submit their bids. And then 3, once they decided on a good, reasonable plan, in this case, buying reactors of American origin from Korea, then they started building straight away. What happened was, if you look at it, from the idea in 2006 or so, to getting the bids in 2011, to starting construction in 2012, that sounds like a long time, like 6 years. And then they didn't even have a reactor on until 2020. But then suddenly in 2020, they get a massive nuclear plant on, starting with 1 reactor. 2021, they get another. 2022, they get another. 2023, they're getting another. What that means is if you looked at only 2006 to 2019, it looks like no nuclear reactor. 2006 to 2020, they have 1 reactor. To 2023, 4 reactors. So that's about 3 or 4 years per reactor at that point. This is the importance of getting a serious program. That's the program that was in mind when BNPP was first built. So in terms of cost, we're seeing different costs. In the Western world, there's a struggle to get back to building. So nuclear reactors are more expensive there, anywhere from, I would say at the moment, 6 to 16 billion in the most unsuccessful nuclear cases. Now, of course, with nuclear, even over budget nuclear pays itself off. Whereas with many wind projects like offshore wind, even hitting your budget exactly, you may never pay off the reactors. So this is an example of what are you putting your money off of? Something that's easier but maybe never paying off? Or do you put it towards something harder that does pay off?
Okay, in line with that, sir, I would also like to ask Miss Angelica. Miss Angelica, why should we take nuclear power over some other tested sources here in the Philippines?
What I see here is so much potential, because we all know that in Taiwan we've stopped having babies. That's just the fact of the matter. Same with Korea, same with Japan, and even in China. So the future should really properly belong to the Philippines, because you guys have the workforce, you guys have the young people who can do the jobs and create economic growth. But they can't do that if you don't have a good, stable source of electricity. And we all know that there's factories moving out of China. They're looking for a place to go. Ask yourself, why haven't they come to the Philippines? I think one of the reasons is they can't rely on the power here. It's not just expensive, it's unreliable. So I think for the Philippines, it's going to boom in the future anyhow. But to really realize the Philippines' potential, you need to create power that is cheap and reliable.
Okay, for Mr. Mark Nelson, how can you convince at least those doubtful minds and critics of the nuclear power plant idea here in the Philippines?
My word to the Philippines is this: if you think you can't do it, then maybe you're right. If you think you can, you're absolutely right. You can. It is your right under international law to get nuclear power. And if you don't exercise that right, with all the countries of the world standing by to help you become powerful in your own time with nuclear energy, then that would be a shame. It would be a waste. So countries around the world are being told by the International Atomic Energy Agency, this is your right to get nuclear energy. Come to us. We're ready to help straight away. You need to just step out and claim what is your right to have the most powerful energy source.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Mark Nelson and Ms. Angelica Ong of Taiwan. And of course, to Congressman Mark Cojuangco from the 5th District of Pangasinan. Thank you so much for this interview for Bombo Radio Philippines. Mga kabombo, mga ka-Star Nation, nakausap po natin ang ilang mga eksperto at of course, ang mambabatas mula dyan sa Pangasinan, kaugnay dun sa mga update sa isa sa mga priority projects ng Marcos administration, itong nuclear energy na hanggang ngayon ho ay inaantabayan na natin kung anong